The last time you saw Jennie McCrary, she was as real as you had ever seen her. All done up in her favorite blue dress, and, as always, kind of scowling. But she was also as dead as you had ever seen her, lying all still-like in a cold open casket inside a cold crowded funeral home on Harrison Street across from the McDonald's with the broken arches. Jennie was this girl you used to know, this woman you used to see, 2 years younger, smarter, alternatively a liberal and an anarchist. Jennie McCrary was this punk rock high school burnout who hated everything, but especially God, and also her parents, and so it was a particularly troubling plot development for Jennie McCrary when it stopped being cool to hate your parents 2 months after it stopped being fashionable to hate God, because she hated God, and she resented her parents, and she got off on all the awe-inspired looks she got from underclassmen as she walked, bleeding, through the hallways and into the auxiliary gym as she'd chew tobacco and spit shit. It is bullshit, she would say whenever you'd come over after 6th period. The new thing is positivity. It was around autumn. She was a junior. The leaves were orange and her face was always red. She said everybody's talking about community building and passion projects and John Green books. You know, somebody actually wrote "Always be awesome" inside a bathroom stall the other day. It's just crazy. People used to write the most horrible shit. Her mother had just been diagnosed with inoperable pancreatic cancer. She almost never talked about it. At Jennie's funeral, all of her friends were there. You recognize some of them, like this guy Greg, who was always sitting along a fold-out chair at the end of an aisle and muttering something to herself. Jennie's family was there too. Her father was weeping. Her extended family was also in attendance, as well as members of the religious community, even though she'd stopped practicing years ago. They lined up to eulogize this dead 21-year-old girl whose problems they had all shoved underneath the rug like a tiny piece of cat shit. She was a kick-ass girl, they said one by one. An artist, a thinker, and troubled but brilliant, rough around the edges but with a sort of scrappy underdog appeal to her like an 80s horror movie, her eccentric interests symptomatic of her considerable intellect. One woman, you thought maybe it was her aunt, shit, who knows, stood up to say that Jennie would lock herself away in her room to recite poetry about oranges into a tape recorder. She was odd, Jennie's maybe aunt said, but that was our Jennie. A few minutes later, everyone piled out of the funeral home, and as you walked out, you glanced once more at the open casket. She looked peaceful. You smiled. It was the last time you ever saw Jennie McCrary. But the last time you saw her alive was at this coffee shop called Holly's in December. You weren't surprised to see her there. On the first Friday of every month, no shit, Holly's held a poetry slam, free to the public, donations encouraged, and Jennie almost always read. She was always reading, always writing, always observing the characters in her life. She wrote poetry in her spare time and recited it with a rhythmic cadence and a barely restrained anger at everything that had happened to her or had not happened to her or did happen or whatever the fuck. She always was writing. She was always writing about herself, about her mother. She also wrote about oranges. You ran into her as you were heading for the bathroom. She was there with this guy Greg. Jennie said when you saw her. You said when you saw her. She was friendly, but awkward at first, loosening up eventually to tell you that she was thinking about going to New York or Los Angeles to try her hand at being an actress or a waitress or something glamorous or not glamorous, or just about anything as long as it is not in this town. As she spoke, you could not help but to look her over. She was thin, stringy looking, and her arms were like the concrete at the Indy 500 in that they were covered in track marks and signified burnout, and her eyes were bloodshot red, and she trembled as she spoke, but she was still so alive that you never could have guessed that her father would find her dead a few months later, all strung up by her neck in the basement of her childhood home, while a repeat of The Twilight Zone played out on the television in front of her. You wished her good luck. You shook Greg's hand and wandered off to the bathroom. You urinated. You washed your hands. And on the way out, you caught a glimpse of your own reflection in the mirror and zoned out for a few seconds, imagining old girlfriends wearing white wedding dresses. The last time you saw her as a romantic partner, though, was in October. Foreplay was always the best with her. She liked ear stuff and hand stuff and liked the taste of your lips more than you liked the taste of anything. She was good at banter too, which was always so important to you when you were younger. Things were always feeling so important to you when you were younger. One time she came over late at night and after you had gotten into a fight with a couple of bruisers. You danced around telling her what happened, and after a solid 10 minutes of back and forth, she pushed you against the wall and kissed you all enthusiastic like. She said, "You taste like blood." You said, "I bite my lips when I'm nervous." She said, "I'm tired of all this he said, she said." She said she made like a vampire and sucked her tongue from your blood and your gums from your throat, all like Twilight. The last time you were together, you talked on her bed, and as she told you about her day, you could not help but to stare at the eccentric context of her bulletin board. Her mother and her father were at a chemotherapy session. Her sister was at a friend's place. She kissed you, then she tussed you, then she encouraged you to be better. She said the best thing about you is that you're passionate and you're funny, but your jokes have all grown dark and morbid and you haven't gotten excited about anything since Lost ended. That was all it took for you to get indignant. You said that, of course, you still got excited about things. She said, yeah, like drugs. And then she said that you barely even got hard anymore. You said that she was just too immature to understand sometimes. She said that you were just too much of an asshole. You told her to screw off, and it launched into this giant fight where you said all kinds of misogynistic shit because you were an asshole. By the end of all the screaming, your throat was sore, and Jenny was exhausted. You were done. She wanted to keep fighting, and so when she tried to start something again, you stopped her by saying, I just can't do this shit anymore. It took her a second to process what that meant, but then it clicked on her and her face contorted, and she sprung up from her bed and she said, fuck you. And you left her like that. You closed your bedroom door behind you for the last and final time and stood there for a few seconds, listening to her reaction, and after a few seconds of what you could only assume was breathing, you heard the click of her tiny tape recorder and her confident voice reading out the words, I am a very ordinary orange. The more you think back on it, though, you start to realize that there were really 1,000 last times that you saw Jennie McCrary. There was the last time that you saw her as a friend, as a stranger, as somebody who you wouldn't dream about for the rest of your life. The last time you looked at her and saw somebody invincible. But even still, going forward, you see her 1,000 more final times because you see kids like that all over the place, passed out drunk on a beanbag chair, tingling with excitement as they sniff drugs off a countertop, and shaking with exhaustion as they wait to be absolved. And it is the strangest thing, but they all look like Jennie McCrary. Thanks a lot.